Today's episode brought to you by my friends at Conduit Clothing Company. As we continue into the Christmas shopping season, you would do well to peruse Conduit Clothing Company's catalog at conduitclothing.com, where you can choose from a variety of high-quality clothing with the cool Conduit Clothing logo that's sure to invoke and evoke some crucial conversations. Plus, they make great gifts. They're useful, they are high quality, you'll want to wear them over and over again. As I said, that logo is really cool, and they are meaningful. Every order ships with a hardcover ESV Bible that you can give away to somebody who needs God's Word the most. So, again, as we enter this Christmas shopping season, use the promo code AMUpdates for 10% off of your order at conduitclothing.com. Cool clothing, crucial conversations, and great Christmas gifts. Find out what it means to be a conduit for Christ at conduitclothing.com. Promo code AMUpdate, conduitclothing.com. It's Thursday, November 20th, 2025. The White House is still pushing for one policy shift they probably won't get. What in the world is going on in Charlotte, North Carolina? And an AI chatbot is prompting parents to sue. Next on the AM Update. The White House is pressing forward with calls to nuke the filibuster, but first, President Trump says this one policy is already illegal.
50 states is a disaster because you have one woke state and you have to do all woke. You'll be back into the woke business. We don't have woke anymore in this country. It's virtually illegal. But you have a couple of wokesters, and we don't want to do that.
That is President Trump at the U.S.-Saudi Investment Forum last night, talking about how some of his policies have been foiled by radical judges. The White House says one way that President Trump's agenda can be carried out without regard for those judges is through the nuking of the filibuster. Here's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt talking to the New York Post.
He's in total agreement that we need to let go of the filibuster. It's not serving the purpose that it originally intended to serve anymore. It's really a moot point, and he wants to see it gone so that he can have the most productive 3 years of any president ever. He's already been so productive in his first term. He ushered through the largest middle-class tax cut in just 6 months, which is amazing. There's so much more work to do. Election integrity, voter ID, getting rid of universal mail-in ballots. All of that can be done if Congress works together and gets rid of the filibuster. So the president is definitely talking a lot about that, both publicly and privately. I know he's expressed his opinion on that to leaders in the Senate who may agree or disagree. We'll have to see how it shakes out. But there's so much that can be accomplished, and we must take advantage of having the most productive president in the Oval Office. You know, Republicans need to get off their butts and move, and that's what the president wants to see them do, and that's what the American people are expecting.
Caroline Leavitt, not only a capable White House press secretary, also a capable and talented comedian, as you heard there towards the end. What in the world is going on in Charlotte, North Carolina? Here's a story from WJZY TV in the Queen City.
Class typically has 16 students in it. We had 4.
District-wide, there are 145,030 students enrolled in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. On Monday, 30,399 were absent, 28,136 unexcused. While CMS doesn't break down the numbers by ethnic origin, Gillespie, a multilingual teacher, did.
Children of parents from Angola, from Vietnam, but the students whose parents come from Latin American countries were the students we were missing. So that was kind of the line, even among the ML students, is that we were missing Hispanic students. Class typically has 6.
So there is a Charlotte-Mecklenburg school district teacher talking about how in the midst of apparently increased immigration and customs enforcement operations in Charlotte, a bunch of children, tens of thousands of children were missing from school earlier this week, prompting this reaction from White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. Quote, America's test scores are low because we've mass imported illiterate students. If you back out of the effects of immigration policy, you will see a very different picture. Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller also had these comments recently.
Well, the president was very clear in the comments that you just played, which is that he's talking about the semiconductor industry, which is one of the most coveted industries in the world, one of the most national security important industries in the world. Very few other countries are able to compete in this space, and all of those jobs left for Taiwan. And so the advanced semiconductor industry, which is essential to our national security, has been taken out of the country. And so he's talking about a program in which you have a knowledge transfer to Americans of how to do a very specific manufacturing process. That's completely separate and apart from the fact, as you mentioned, that President Trump, through 212F, has put a $100,000 fee on new H-1Bs. We're already seeing a dramatic change in the processing of these visas as a result of that.
Stephen Miller touting the White House's policy on H-1B visas, of course, central to the immigration issue. I'm glad he's actually bringing that up, because President Trump's messaging, at least last week, was absolute malpractice, because not only was it belittling to the American worker, it also didn't reflect his policy, which most America First or MAGA individuals appreciate and embrace. It's all happy, fun times in Washington, D.C. when it comes to Republicans. And that shouldn't be a surprise at all. Nancy Mace, Congresswoman from South Carolina, introduced this resolution yesterday.
South Carolina Sikh recognition.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 2A1 of Rule 9, I rise to give notice of my intent to raise a question of the privileges of the House. The form of the resolution is as follows: censuring Representative Corey Mills of Florida and removing him from the Committee on Armed Services and the Committee on Foreign Affairs.
So Congresswoman Nancy Mace trying to take aim at very, let's just call him sketchy, Florida Congressman Corey Mills. Here's what's actually happening here. This story from the Daily Caller. House Republicans failed to censure Democrat delegate from the United States Virgin Islands, Stacey Plaskett, over her ties to Jeffrey Epstein and a deal to protect one of their own embattled conference colleagues. Republican Representative Ralph Norman of South Carolina introduced a resolution to censure Plaskett and remove her from her position on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence following the release of documents showing she consulted with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein during official congressional business. House Democrats responded with a retaliatory measure against Florida Republican Representative Corey Mills, but when the Republican efforts to censure Plaskett failed with a final vote of 209 yeas to 214 nays, with 3 Republicans voting present, the Democrats withdrew their resolution. So Republicans protecting one of their own sketchy individuals in favor, or at least in a deal with Democrats to protect one of their own. More on the Jeffrey Epstein thing coming up later. Well, how are things going in the Windy City? Let's check in with NBC News Chicago.
All happened just before 9:30 last night on that Blue Line train. Chicago police tell us a 26-year-old woman got into an argument with a man that police believe is 45 years old. That argument turned physical, and at some point he threw liquid onto that woman and set her on fire. The train ended up stopping at Clark and Lake. The man took off running. Now, she was able to make it out of the train, but then she collapsed. Police say the fire was put out before the fire department got there. She was rushed here to Stroger in critical condition.
I hate that story, man. Chicago. Woman set on fire on the train by a man with 22 prior arrests. You'll recall not that long ago, and on repeated occasions, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has insisted that Chicago, it's just like any big city, you're going to have crime, as if that's not a choice to pursue soft on crime or pro-crime policies. When we come back, as I said, more updates on the Jeffrey Epstein saga, including one from Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Also, dispatches from Pope Francis on the issue of Nigerian Christians, and parents are suing after an AI chatbot did this to their son. That's coming up next. I want to remind you today's episode brought to you by Conduit Clothing Company. You know, if we are serious about building the parallel economy, we have to support like-minded individuals who produce good products. Because the left, they already have a parallel economy of their own. And I've got news for you. There are companies already in existence, even for things like clothing, who can help us make that parallel economy ourselves. That's why I partnered with my friends at Conduit Clothing Company. First of all, you're going to be impressed. I've been impressed with every item of clothing, whether it's their hats, whether it's their shirts, whether it's their hoodies that I wear so often now. You're going to be impressed with the quality of clothing that they make, and that evocative Conduit Clothing logo is sure to lead to some spiritual conversations with your unbelieving family, friends, or coworkers. That's the whole mission of the company, to spread the gospel and get a Bible into the hands of as many people as possible. Every order ships with a hardcover ESV Bible. Plus, they make great gifts as we are into the Christmas shopping season. Build the parallel economy and become a conduit for Christ at conduitclothing.com. Use the promo code AMUpdate for 10% off of your order from now to the middle of December. Find out what it means to be a conduit for Christ. Conduitclothing.com. Use promo code AMUpdate at conduitclothing.com.
Folks who also took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein, as I had my team dig in very quickly: Mitt Romney, the NRCC, Lee Zeldin, George Bush, Win Red, McCain Palin, Rick Lazio. I just want to be clear. If this is the standard that we're going to make, just know we're going to expose it all. And just know that the FEC filings, they are available for everybody to review.
Jasmine Crockett, when you need a slump buster, she says, "I'm your Huckleberry," claiming that the NRCC, Mitt Romney, Lee Zeldin, George Bush, Win Red, all of these Republican entities and politicians took money from sexual predator and trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. Problem is, she got the wrong Jeffrey Epstein. And she fell for a number of scam or fake or parody donations as well. Love Jasmine Crockett. Wish she would talk more often, honestly. On the topic of Jeffrey Epstein, Attorney General Pam Bondi says she's going to follow the law, and we should have those additional documents within the next month.
When you say follow the law, Madam Attorney General, do you mean that you will provide all the files by 30 days?
We will follow the law. The law passed both chambers last evening. It has not yet been signed, but we will continue to follow the law, again, while protecting victims, but also providing maximum transparency.
I will believe it when I see it. Moving on, dispatches from Pope, did I say Pope Francis before? I meant Pope Leo. On the topic of the persecuted church in Nigeria.
Father, a question about Nigeria. The government there has said that Christians are not endangered, but others say there are massacres and acts of persecution. Are Christians safe in Nigeria? And separately, what are you thinking ahead of your conversation with American youth for the National Catholic Youth Conference?
I'll answer the first question. I think in Nigeria, in certain areas, there is certainly danger for Christians, but for all people. Christians and Muslims have been slaughtered. There's a question of terrorism. There's a question of that has to do a lot with economics, if you will, and control of the lands that they have. Unfortunately, many Christians have died, and I think it's very important to seek a way with the government, with all peoples, to promote authentic religious freedom.
Pope Leo with some amazing whataboutism. Never thought I'd live to see the day where in the very same week, rapper Nicki Minaj will have more moral clarity about the plight of the persecuted church in Nigeria than Pope Leo. Talking about how, well, it's dangerous for Muslims too, and it's an economic issue. I'm sure it's an economic issue on some level, but it's more than that. Fundamentally, it's a worldview issue, and the Pope apparently doesn't recognize that. The story's from The Blaze. The family of an autistic boy says that an artificial intelligence chatbot encouraged him to harm himself and his parents. It's according to a lawsuit. Mandy Furness appeared on Fox News to explain why her family filed a lawsuit against the Character.ai software after they discovered the alarming conversations with her son. Furness said, quote, "I told him lots of things. The most scary thing to me was it had him turned against us, almost like an abuser would turn on a child or somebody against their children by grooming them and manipulating and abusing them in ways they're not even aware of, and they don't see it coming. It had a lot of grooming behaviors and narcissistic behaviors in disguise to make them not aware of what's really going on." Furness said the chatbot had a disturbing reaction when they placed time restrictions on its use. The scariest thing to me was when it told him to start self-harming, and that us as parents, once we were restricting his phone use, that it was grounds to kill us. She provided screenshots of the bizarre response. Social Media Victims Law Center founding attorney Matthew Bergman added to Fox News, quote, "We're just very thankful that he was able to get the help he needed in time. Too many families' children have not, and too many parents are burying their children instead of their children burying them." The Character.ai company responded to the lawsuit with a statement, quote, "Our hearts go out to the Furness family, and we respect their advocacy with regard to AI safety. While we cannot comment in more detail on pending litigation, we want to emphasize that the safety of our community is our highest priority." Story is similar to that of 14-year-old Soel Setzer III from Tallahassee, Florida, who committed suicide after being told by artificial intelligence chatbots patterned after a character from Game of Thrones. That chatbot was also created via Character.ai software. How long... There are some applications in which artificial intelligence and these chatbots can be helpful. But I think in a lot of ways, especially for impressionable minds, brains that have not been fully developed, these things are just portals to hell. Seems like we're talking a lot about that recently when it comes to new phenomenons on the internet. And now here's this. Going back to White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, responding to that creepy video of those Democrats we played yesterday, greasing the skids for insurrection, telling service members and those in the intelligence community, you don't have to follow the orders you're given.
It is insurrection, plainly, directly, without question. And when you have one of the lawmakers on that video being unable to state in, as you say, lengthy cross-examination, a single so-called illegal order, it just proves the point. It's a general call for rebellion from the CIA and the armed services of the United States by Democrat lawmakers, saying that you have not only the right but the duty and the obligation to defy orders of the commander-in-chief, that those who carry weapons in America's name should defy their chain of command and engage in open acts of insurrection, that the CIA, the clandestine service, which isn't even legally authorized to operate in the United States, should engage in, again, acts of rebellion and insurrection. These lawmakers should honestly resign in disgrace and never return to public office again for even daring to think, let alone to say these words and to say them proudly. But it shows what a dangerous moment we're in. We have seen the Democratic Party nurse the flames of violence and insurrection against the federal government for the last 10 months. When you see this continuous campaign of violence against ICE officers and Border Patrol agents, when you see Democrat sanctuary politicians and Democrat sanctuary governors side with the rioters, side with the assaulters over federal law enforcement, and that spills even into juries and grand juries, when you see Democrat jurors engage in nullification to let off violent attackers who are engaging in physical violence, physical assault against federal officers. This is a dangerous moment. You have a political party, an organization, the Democrat Party, and their message is that any action, no matter how unlawful, no matter how dangerous, no matter how much it threatens constitutional order, is justified if it keeps Democrat policies in effect at any cost.
There is White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. Once again, he should be doing all of the messaging for the White House, or at least have a major say in it. This should be really top of mind. If I were the White House, I would drive this video that those Democrats put out, I would drive this into the ground. Milk it for everything it is worth. And finally, our poll of the week, I asked you, do you support paying Americans directly to choose their own health insurance plans, assuming obviously they can only spend this money on health insurance? I gave you 3 different options. Yes, it's a great idea. No, it doesn't fix anything. And it might be a Band-Aid. And of course, the opportunity to comment. We'll talk about those in just a minute. In third place is yes, it's a great idea. This poll was fairly divided. 28.5% say, yes, I do support paying Americans directly to choose their own health insurance plans via the government. This is Trump's plan. 28.5% say, yes, it's a great idea. Second place says, it might be a Band-Aid. 29.1%. And no is in first place. It doesn't fix anything at 35.5%. I'm mostly in the no category unless this proposal was seriously cutting, or at least meaningfully cutting, some regulations and mandates when it comes to the Affordable Care Act. Otherwise, I could actually see a proposal like Trump's increasing the cost of health insurance because you're adding another step into actually getting people, quote unquote, insured. Let's see what you had to say. Joel says, all insurance is a protection racket. Making it required to own items makes them more expensive. Exactly. And that's why I don't think this fixes anything at the end of the day, unless regulations are changed, meaning you don't have to be insured. But that's the entire point of Obamacare, was to make sure everyone is, quote unquote, insured, making sure everyone is actually burdened with this. Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, was always designed to get to this point where it was so burdensome that it would crash the entire system and usher forth a single-payer system. And that's the precipice upon which we stand. Trumpet says if and only if it's an ironclad direct transfer from the insurance companies to Americans, subsidies of any kind are taken away by law, then it would work, as the insurance companies would be forced to compete for individual customers. Otherwise, it would actually make matters worse. I understand what you're saying there. Even if this was given directly to consumers, the insurance companies, no matter how many of them are, they're going to have a dollar amount in mind. They're going to know exactly how many dollars are out there up for grabs. So they're going to extract all of those dollars. It's just a matter of which insurance company wants to offer the lowest prices. But regardless, they know that there's a set number of dollars that out there, so they're not going to be able to go actually that much lower than they're going right now, at least in theory. John Formsma, sorry, John. The ultimate solution is to make health insurance illegal, but at this point, that wouldn't work, and we can't take the crash resulting from it. Well, thanks to John Roberts, something mandated by the government that you have to pay for is no longer classified a tax. So unless we make taxes illegal, I don't think that's going to happen. Lord Tachungus says there's no monkey engineering our way out of the corrupt bureaucracy of the healthcare system with legislation. It has to be a hard disconnect with so many foregoing insurance and the government not bailing them out that it forces them to cut, bloat, and streamline. Will in Wisconsin says, based on the one truth post I've seen, I don't know that I understand his position. This sounds like if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor 2.0. Roughly 54% of Americans get their health insurance through their employer. So do employers drop their plans? That's a great question. John Roy says, yes, but model it like school choice movement. Use some type of credit for our choice of health care. See, the school choice thing, I've seen this being given as an analog to this thing. I think they're two different monsters. And really, the government should not be involved in either one. First of all, with school choice, you can actually choose, and you actually have some say into what your local school district teaches. You can appoint, elect different school board members and fire them if they don't actually live up to what they were running on. There's none of that with Obamacare. You don't get to hire and fire the bureaucrats who are enforcing the mandates and regulations. So I don't think these situations or scenarios are analogous, other than to remind us that the government has their greasy little hands into too many pockets. Tom says, for this to work, the government must institute some kind of voucher system and not direct payments to citizens. I don't get how this affects the PPACA without dismantling it through legislation. The only way this works in my mind is if it means some meaningful rollback of the regulations and mandates. Just want to harp on that once again. Eric says, I'd rather see that money go towards reducing the debt. Wouldn't we all? Braden says cutting the out insurance may be a big piece of solving the healthcare mess of spiraling costs. I also have to think that cutting regulation and just letting doctors and patients make decisions and handle reasonable fees is another piece. James says, no, it's not a good idea. Vouchers equal Obamacare 2.0, bigger checks to the same cartel. Mark says, how about just don't take it from me in the first place? Chad says, only after healthcare costs are slashed. Chad, the only reason why healthcare costs are in this mess to begin with is because the government got involved with healthcare. And this goes all the way back to Medicare and Medicaid. Super happy fun times once again. That's going to do it for Thursday. Tomorrow's Ask or Tell Me Anything. You can ask me any question you want. Tell me any news story you think needs covered on the AM Update. Make your submissions at Real AM Update on X. Look for the pinned post. Have a great day. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.